Okay. So, first of all, welcome to my TED Talks. Thank you for joining me. We're here to talk about a very serious topic tonight here on the show. So, let's get right into it. Who are the most feared people in our society? How to be the most feared person in a society? See, some would argue, and I would actually agree with them, completely in fact, that to be feared, one has to be in control. But that's something that pretty much everybody already knows inherently. I don't need to be here to tell you what you already know. I'm here to tell you what you don't know. That's my fucking job. That's my job, and I'm going to do that job. So, in counterpart to that capability, there is a very complementary trait to have, to be, and to embody, and that is fearlessness. To be the most terrifying person in any room is to be the least fearful of anything. Now, you might, many people get caught up on the theatrics of it, the cadence of one's voice, the way one presents themselves, the angle of someone's smile, the eyelid position of one's eyes, the lighting in a room. But these are nothing without a drive to be fearless enough to break all of the taboos that tell oneself to not fight against these, to confine oneself within the boundaries of what society tells everybody is acceptable. So, the first step is always fearlessness. That is, in essence, where it branches out from. Where all of the broken taboos, the casting off of the ability to care what others think of you and your behavior. And it's where control comes from. It comes from the fearlessness to experience, to be uninhibited, to work in the world and come to understand that when you don't do what is expected, other people still will. And that is your advantage here. That no matter how many times you do the same thing over and over and over again, everybody else is going to respond in an expected, never deviating way. There's only so many ways that they're ever going to think to respond. Because they're not like you. They're not in control. They're afraid. They're worried. They're tied down by human mental limitations and by the weight of what they're processing in the moment. They are overstimulated. They cannot handle the very idea that they are tied to a mortal coil, and that can be threatened. So to simplify, to be the most fearful person in any room you're in, you have to be the least afraid of everything and anything that could happen, that will happen, that has happened, that could go wrong, that is in your environment. You have to understand the people around you, how they tick, how they are, and know how to use them, and know how they use themselves. Because those are the same things. When you know how they use themselves, then it's no different than using them. Because all you have to do is take control of themselves. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little too edgy here. So, let's bring it back a bit. This society's idea of the villain and the saint. What do these archetypes have in common? Fearlessness. And they're in control. What is a villain? A villain tends to be very, very similar to hero in upbringing and life experience. However, the internalization, the execution of that internalization tends to be far, far different. And I'll get to that in a minute. Now, what else do they have in common? Ironically enough, though it might not seem as if it is this way for many, what a saint and what a villain have in common, in addition, is discipline. The discipline to be committed, to see a world in front of you with stimulus, and choose to do what benefits you, rather than just what you want. To see a greater vision and strive for that vision, regardless of what has to be given up and what you have to sacrifice. Now, in the hero's case, that is much more societally constrained, I would put it, which is a completely valid and good thing to be. I'm not here making an argument that anyone should sympathize with the villain. After all, the villain is a very flawed character. At the end of the day, due to the very fact that they have internalized their trauma and cast off the very idea that people and other subjects should be seen through the lens of their own of their own selves. That is what sets a villain apart from a saint. Just this duality of I see you and I acknowledge that you are you and you are me and we are we. And a villain doesn't do that. A villain sees the we, the I, the you, and it's reduced to an idea, a framework, a soulless concept that is just a formula on a page. And because of that, there isn't a reason to acknowledge, value, care about society's judgment, about society's standards, society's values, because that's been cast off by the very nature of the core framework of a monster. That is what it is to be. Now, perhaps I shouldn't associate monster and villain exactly the same. There's a differentiation there. A villain, in its archetypal form, does tend to be very consistent in framework. Whereas a monster tends to really only care about one framework. And that is just the pure idea of hedonism. What feels good to me? When that is your absolute sole presumption, and your absolute just bare value in life, then what do you think follows? I mean, what follows is justification. If your only value is your desire, then what can't be justified? There are no restrictions. Then who would ever choose anything else? And that's how a monster is. That's how a monster thinks. That's how a monster operates. Well, look at me changing the cadence of my voice and my intonation just to keep up with the song that's playing right now. How great of me to be so easily manipulated by the music. But aren't we all? We're all just drum beats on the track that is life, playing constantly. How could we ever expect to be anything less? So, back to the idea of being feared, right? Gotten a little off track. Just a bit. Wee amount. The idea of being feared. So, people have an innate fear of that which chooses to not value what they value, and that which chooses to have a very absurd and what is the word I'm trying to think of? Perplexing nature. There it is. Their innate fear of what they don't understand. See, everybody has an idea of what reality is. And the truth is, most of us truly are looking at the shadows cast upon the wall by the fire, believing it's reality. That is just the way it is. And, I mean, well, even fire casts a shadow if a bright enough light comes on it, so who's to say even the light is actually the truth? Did I just make a case for postmodernism? Oh no, I truly do sound like a villain. Alright, let me bring it back to center. So, many people value deranged frameworks. As long as they seem to posit value for them. And then, well, I guess that is to some degree what we can call heroism, the idea of a hero. One which exudes brilliance in a way that posits value in the lens of society. And the villain, let's call the villain I'm not sure if absurdist is the right word here, but the absurdist framework, which posits really nothing of value. It is a justification of itself rather than a justification of truth itself. It serves its own end and means. It does not posit to society. It does not grant anyone or anything value. It justifies and sustains itself. And that is the very core of evil. Something that only exists to validate itself and its own values. And in this pursuit of fulfilling itself, it casts off in a way that which does not fulfill itself, i.e., recognizing and valuing and considering that which isn't itself. It refuses to acknowledge the very idea that that which is outside of itself exists in a valuable form at all. And that is the truly terrifying justification of evil. Because it exists for itself. It doesn't have to justify itself to you, or society, or your values. It only has to justify itself to itself. Whereas the idea of good and existence, the idea of good and what I would call truth, is dependent on other validating factors outside of itself. You have to... It has to be able to be validated by that which is outside itself to be good. So to be good, it has to appeal to validation outside of itself. And this is where you get the archetype of a hero. You get it from serving, from helping, from serving. Did I say serving? I may have said serving. And that is why the hero is seen as good. Because it appeals to validating witnesses outside of its own framework. It will adapt when it sees a meaningful value outside of its own framework. And the most interesting part is the archetype of a hero, of a villain turned hero. You see, the idea of the redemption arc, in and of itself, is this very transformation of a framework that exists to validate itself. Finally seeing and accepting these validating factors outside of itself and valuing them and integrating them. And then the villain slowly changes in our mind and becomes a changed person. When the monster accepts that it should not just live for its own desires and nothing but, that is when the monster becomes human. That is when the monster says to itself, I understand what I am and what I want and what I can be and what I am capable of. And because I value that which is outside of myself and what I want, I will suppress that. And I will become human for the sake of goodness, for the sake of truth, for the sake of the light. I am no longer in the darkness. I am seen by the other validating factors. Therefore, I am human. Call me man. I am no longer a monster. I exist in a form that witnesses and that is witnessed. And I value that. I value that input and giving that input. And because of that, I am human. I am more than a beast. I am more than a monster. I may still see shadows, believing them to be reality. But as long as I can accept input from other validating factors, I can always see more light. I can always leave the cave, take a step forward, closer to the light, out of the darkness in the cave, and I can step into the light. One epiphany, one human interaction, universal interaction, truth integration at a time. I can become a person because I can be validated and I can validate. Because I can accept and I can posit. Because I'm not just sustaining for what I believe to be only what can be. Because I am human, and the light in me sees the light in you. And the light in you sees the light in me. And the light in we sees the light in thee. Because of that, we are humanity. Thank you for coming to my TED Talks. I hope you enjoyed your time here. I certainly did, playing this character that I'm playing here. That's really all I've got here.